NL Sports Central will be going over next. Final prediction of this offseason, and it will be over the Iowa Hawkeyes. And this is a team that was 10-3 in 2019. All around a good season for this team. Very surprising to see them get up to 10 wins. And of course, no one really expected them to, but how will they do in 2020 is what we're going over here today. We're going to be going over whether or not this team can improve in the 2020 season, along with their returning production and a full prediction on every game on Iowa's schedule going into 2020. So with that, let's look at your season trends from 2019 for this team. Of course, they were 10-3 overall once again. They were 6-2 between September and October, and then they were 4-1 between November and the postseason. And this may have been the quietest 10-win team that I've ever seen. I mean, no one was really talking about them all of last season. I mean, they were kind of in the background for a good chunk of the season. And for them to get up to 10 wins and no one was really even talking about them at the end of the season, it was kind of surprising to me. I mean, this team definitely was one of the better ones, I'd say, in the Big Ten. And, I mean, they had a chance to win that Big Ten West division. Of course, we saw Minnesota and Wisconsin both play pretty great seasons. But in the end, I mean, still a great season for Iowa. No one was ever really talking about them once again, which was crazy in my mind. But a few of your key wins, I mean, this team improved a lot over the year as well. I mean, their best month came in November when they had two really big wins. And some of your big wins, speaking of which, you had Iowa State, of course, on the road in Ames. Big win there, 18-17. You also had a win against Minnesota. And that's really what shattered their hopes of making it to the college football playoff. Of course, the week before that game, they had just beaten Penn State, which was a huge win for that team. Then Iowa came around and knocked them off 23-19. And you also had a big win in Lincoln against Nebraska, 27-24. And that was before beating USC in the Holiday Bowl, 49-24. So once again, all around just a great season for Iowa. And now let's look at returning production. Of course, you lose your starting quarterback, Nate Stanley. And that's going to be a big loss for this team. Of course, he's done pretty well over the past couple of seasons. He had just right around 3,000 yards with 16 touchdowns and 7 interceptions last season, with right around a 60% completion rate. So yeah, all around, he was a great player last season, and it's going to be a tough loss for him to no longer be with them. But yeah, you do return your top running back in Tyler Goodson, that's going to be a big return as well, with 800 yards and 5 touchdowns last season. And yeah, you also return your second running back in McKee Sargent, which he had just over 700 yards with 4 touchdowns. So this running back core is looking really good heading into 2020. They do lose their third running back in Torrin Young, but he did not have near as big of an impact on this team as, say, Tyler Goodson or McKee Sargent did, as he had just run around 430 yards with a touchdown last season. So yeah, running back core is looking really good. I think they should probably have one of the better ones in the Big Ten next season. But as far as the receiving core goes, really looking good there as well. They returned their top receiver, Amir Smith-Marset, so that's going to be a huge return. 830 yards is what he had with 8 touchdowns. And yeah, they also returned their second wide receiver in Tyrone Tracy, which he had 628 yards with 4 touchdowns last season. And then they also returned all of their other main receivers as well. So that includes like Brandon Smith, who had 430 yards. And I mean, so that's going to be really good for them to be able to return their main receivers, and that's going to be huge for the quarterback coming in as well next season. I mean, whoever's going to be the starting quarterback, I think they're going to be in good hands, of course, or they're going to be in good shape with a good running back core and a good receiving core. Of course, this offensive line would probably be the main concern that I'd have for the new quarterback, as they do lose 2 on the defensive line. But all around, I mean, that's not all that bad. I mean, only losing 2, so yeah, no main concerns as far as the offense goes. But on the defense, you do lose 1 linebacker and 2 in the secondary. And you also lose 2 on your defensive line. That includes your early NFL draft pick, AJ Espenza, which he was a big part of this team last season. So, or Epinesa. So that's going to be a big part of this team. And yeah, of course, that brings up the question too: is Iowa a dark horse contender for 2020? And honestly, I think Iowa definitely is. I mean, no one's really ever talking about this team, which surprises me a ton. I mean, Iowa, once again, as I said before, they were probably the quietest 10-win team I've ever seen. I mean, they put up 10 wins and they had a great season, but no one was really ever talking about them. I mean, especially after that USC win in the Holiday Bowl at the end of the season, still no one was talking about them. And I think Iowa definitely has some potential to do some really big things this next season. I mean, no one's really talking about them in the Big Ten West, and that's why they're a big dark horse, in my opinion, for the 2020 season. Is because you got Minnesota and you've got Wisconsin in that division already, and everyone's expecting the winner of that division to be one of those 2 teams. But no one's ever remembering that Iowa's also in that division. I think Iowa could definitely sneak up on a couple of big teams next season, and it wouldn't surprise me to see them get a couple of big upsets as well. I mean, this team has got the potential, and they've got the talent for that as well. So, I mean, this team definitely is one to watch out for, I would say, in 2020 because of that. And yeah, sorry for that typo there, especially once again. AJ is supposed to be Epinesa, not Espenza. But anyway, with that, let's look at your schedule for next season. Of course, you start off the year against Northern Iowa on September 5th, and then you got Iowa State. As usual, of course, you play Iowa State every year, and it's going to be at home in Iowa City next season. And then you got a big game against Minnesota on the 18th on the road, so that's going to be a very important early game for Iowa is to win against Minnesota. Of course, Minnesota is going to be one of their main rivals in the Big Ten West next season, so you got to get a win there. But then you play Northern Illinois at home the next week on the 26th. And then on the 3rd, you play Michigan State. You got Ohio State and Penn State in back-to-back road games on the 10th and the 17th. And then you got Northwestern on the 24th. You have your bye week on Halloween, and then you got Illinois on the road on the 7th, followed by Nebraska on the 14th. Kind of odd there. Of course, Nebraska and Iowa have always played each other on the final week. So, I mean, instead of that, this season, you actually have them on the 3rd to last week. And then you got Purdue on the road. And then you got Wisconsin for your rivalry week game on the 28th. So, overall, I'd say your schedule is probably the toughest in September. I mean, the tough games are pretty much distributed pretty well for Iowa this season. Of course, you got a big game in September against Minnesota, and then you've got a couple of big games in October, and then in November you got a couple of big games as well. So, I mean, yeah, I mean this schedule really is not all that tough, I would say. The good thing is that you do have your tough games kind of split up throughout the schedule, so that's going to be good for Iowa, especially next season. But here's what I'm expecting out of your September. I think you go 3-1 in this month. I think you get wins against Northern Iowa and Iowa State, same with Northern Illinois. That Minnesota game, I mean, I went back and forth on that so many times. But I just think Minnesota next season, all around, I mean, they're going to be the better team against Iowa, I think. And especially with it being at home against Iowa for Minnesota, that's going to be huge for them. I think Minnesota gets a big win at the beginning of the season against Iowa. So you're going to go into your October with a 3-1 record, which really is not all that bad. I do think the Iowa State game, watch out for that. That's going to be a close game, but I think Iowa gets the win in the end. But in your October, that's going to be a brutal month. I mean, you got back-to-back games against Ohio State and Penn State, both being on the road. So that really does not set up well, in my opinion. So I do think you take losses against both Ohio State and Penn State. But in the end, you still get wins against Michigan State and Northwestern. So you head into your November with a 5-3 record, so it doesn't really look all that good for Iowa to win the division at that point. But honestly, through your November, I think you blow past your November pretty easily. So this team will go undefeated in the final month. And this team is definitely one that I definitely think, I mean, even if they don't make it to the Big Ten Championship, I mean, this team is going to be in really good shape heading into their bowl game. Because, I mean, you're going to be 9-3 and coming off of a 5-game winning streak to finish off the season. Of course, I think you're going to beat off Illinois and Purdue pretty easily. And then I think you beat off Nebraska as well in a close one. Same with Wisconsin. The good thing is you do have both of those games at home, so that's going to help this team a ton. But yeah, your record prediction is going to be 9-3 for next season. I mean, I kind of went back and forth. Once again, that Minnesota game, it could easily go either way. So, I mean that's what I mean with it being such a tough game and such an important game as well. Because if Iowa wins that one, that sends Minnesota to probably a 9-3 record, and that puts Iowa up at a 10-2 record. Which, I mean, that should, I mean, especially with Iowa, I have them beating Wisconsin on the 28th of November. And so if Iowa does beat Minnesota in that game on September 18th, that could easily send Iowa to the Big Ten Championship game. So once again, that game is extremely important to both sides. So you got to watch out for that especially. But, I mean, once again, I just don't think Iowa gets the win there. But in the end, I mean, still, it's going to be a really close race in the Big Ten West next season. Really looking forward to seeing who pulls it out. I mean, of course, there's still, I'd say, 4 or 5 teams in that division that honestly could pull it out of nowhere. Of course, Minnesota last season almost did it. I mean, if they could have gotten a win in the final week against Minnesota, they would have been on their way. But, I mean, once again, for Iowa, I think this is a team that definitely has potential to contend next season. Your record prediction, as always, is 9-3 next season. So, yeah, with that about wraps up our final prediction on this team for the 2020 season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Iowa. Also, let me know whether or not you disagree with anything here. I'd like to hear your thoughts. But once again, thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this preview, be sure to slap a like on it and subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel. I'd really appreciate that. But as always, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I will see you all later.